All right, well, welcome, neighbors. I'm Ana Valdemoros. I am the council member for District 4, Salt Lake City, and here is Chris Wharton, District 3 council member, and council member Pui of District 2 in Salt Lake City. We all share boundaries here downtown, and we thought it would be a great idea to come talk to the neighbors about some of the homelessness initiatives and updates of what's been going on this past year, maybe even past few months. Before we start, just a reminder that we have listening devices at the sign-up table. So if you cannot hear us very well, you can get some headphones to hear us better. This will be recorded, so the neighbors that have not been able to be here, they'll be able to see it later in our website and our social media platforms. We know we have some questions that were asked already online, and today you can ask questions as well. So we're going to go through them at the end of our presentation, but the ones that we can get answered, we'll have them answered online. So we'll post all of the questions regardless, if we were able to answer them here or not, so that you guys can see what other neighbors are asking about or clarification, etc. We do have somewhat of decorum, so we're going to use the rules that we use at city council meetings, and essentially, we'd rather you not say racist things to us. Don't use profanity, don't yell, don't clap, don't cheer, so that we all feel safe when we talk, and not us, just us, all of us, so that we can have, a somewhat of a relaxed conversation about this very, very hot topic, if not our top concern in Salt Lake City as council members, and I'm sure you share our concerns with us. So anyway, okay, that was that. Anyway, so we are glad to have the opportunity to do this. It's new for us. But we want to start doing this so that you and I, all of us, can have those conversations, ask us questions, and really share what we feel and the things that we can do and we cannot do as council members. This is a top priority for us. Homelessness is a tough issue. It's this monster that we're trying to take down. And we have many initiatives. We don't know everything, but we're trying everything that we can within our realm of responsibility and resources. We are aware of the things that are happening downtown, that we see downtown. We see people that are still unsheltered, that are suffering because they're sheltered, but suffering because of a mental illness or a drug addiction. And we know we don't have enough places for them to go. However, we know that we can do certain things here and there to help those that are ready to go into either housing or into a shelter or into a sanctioned camping or a tiny home village, as we will talk about very soon. We, as council members or as the legislative branch in our municipal government, we're in charge of rules, legislation, and we're in charge of our budget. And we use your taxes to run the city, and we use some of your taxes to do housing, which we use a lot of your taxes to do housing so that we can help with the housing crisis. However, even though we do all of that, we recognize that we are missing something, which is our behavioral health and mental health, and things that we know our police officers and our firefighters are constantly talking to us about. What can we do with some of the folks that are suffering outside and might not want our help? And I know that right now, some of the options for the police officers are, if they encounter somebody maybe being disruptive, maybe committing a minor crime, maybe kicking a can, or swearing or yelling profanities or talking to an imaginary friend, which I'm sure you've seen I live downtown. It happens to me on a daily basis where I have to encounter those. What do we do with those people? Because right now the police department has two options. We can take them to jail, but they will be released because there's no real crime happening, or at least not that serious. And then two, we can take them to an ER and to the hospital. And the hospitals are saying, this is not necessarily an emergency. This person might be having maybe a mental health crisis, but it's not necessarily an emergency. We need to go take care of the person that's about to die. And so we've been we've been working really hard to get more attention from the county and from the state to look at these things. Anyway, so we know we have a lot to go through, but some of the things that we wanted to talk about, and then you guys let me know when you guys wanted to talk about. So some of the things that just recently happened within the last year. We, as council members, Councilmember Petro and Councilmember Puy and myself, had a lot of feedback from the neighbors, like yourselves downtown, and said, hey, what's happening out here, it's outrageous. We can't see people suffering this way. We see them talking to themselves, doing all of this, and you guys have two options. I don't know if that's the right thing to do, so we decided to go talk to the county because they do have the resources for mental health and behavioral issues. And we knew that they're working on a receiving center. Basically, it's a place where some of these folks can go, the police department can go take them there, and then medical professional help can decide what's the path, what's going on, what's going to happen to them, and get them the help they need for recovery. And so we knew that, and that's always in the works. We're missing somebody here. It's gonna happen next year, maybe this year, maybe in 10 years, we don't know. And so we kind of got tired with Councilmember Puy and Petro, and we said, that's cool, and go ahead and find your funding, but we need something now. And how can we help? How can we help you understand how our neighbors are, shelter and shelter suffering? How can we get you to do something before that happens? And so we were able to get approval. All of the county council members voted for this temporary receiving center that just opened last Friday. So we were able, our police officers, our public safety are going to be able to take some of these folks that are having a mental health crisis or a behavioral issue, to take them there for 24 hours, not jail, not the ER, where they can have peer support, where they have doctors figuring out what the medication is or giving somewhat of an assessment of these folks that are really suffering out there. And that's a huge win for Salt Lake City and for the county, because literally we're using a lot of funding for our police officers and public safety to do something that perhaps they're not equipped. The last, when I talk about the alternative response models, which is kind of tied to that. A couple years ago, we've been talking to the police department about all of these things, and we're like, how else? We feel like you guys are spending so much money in these calls, because that's the 911 call that we hear from the neighbors call. It's a little bit chaotic, but you're not really helping. Because one, you're not trained for that, but two, I think the issues are beyond criminal activity right now. And so we decided to shift a little bit the way we do public safety. And that's called the alternative response model. So today we have about 6 different ways that we help our shelter community to give them the services that they need. And it's not necessarily the threat of the uniform, if you will. Sometimes it doesn't work, it doesn't help for somebody that is in a state of mind that it's chaotic at the time. As you can, sometimes you have a lot of fire trucks that you see. I mean, it becomes really loud, it becomes really danger alert, and perhaps it's somebody that is just having an episode of mental health crisis that it wasn't that serious as to bring police officers and the fire trucks. So we have social workers. We hired social workers for a group that is called the Community Health Access Team. It's CHAT. Now, when you call 911 or when you call the 799-3000 non-emergency line, they will ask you the questions of what's really happening. Is this a life or death, or is somebody just being disruptive, or is somebody that seems to be maybe inebriated or maybe high on the drug or something. And these social workers will be able to come and tend to that person. So social workers with medical experience trying to analyze what's going on to this person and calm them down. And it's been saving over hundreds and hundreds of police calls. And that is, it was in the news, go Google it at Salt Lake Tribune, and there's a lot of information on how they go about business, and it's saving us a bunch of money. So the police officers can actually focus on the crime and not on the mental health issue. And that is something that we are super proud about. It's something that we talk about all the time with our state representatives up in Washington, D.C., to show them that the municipality, at least the capital city, is trying, with the limited resources that we have, trying everything that we can to help the unsheltered and to keep an eye on us and support us and champion this type of response models that we're doing. And hopefully we can model, the rest of the state can model what we do and get support from the federal government and the state. We have the medical responders in addition to paramedics. We have the park rangers. I'm not sure if you guys have seen them. They are in Liberty Park, Pioneer Park, I can't remember what other parks they are at. But they're on-site compliance officers to help share and enforce park rules. So in a friendlier way, if you will. We have the rapid intervention team, which is the cleanup of public property and rights of way. So we have a Salt Lake City mobile app where people take pictures of something that it's dirty, and then within 48 hours that they're cleaning for the neighbors, whether it be business or residential. We have a police coordinator, which deals with the businesses downtown, and talks to the business owners constantly about feedback, about solutions, about things that they can do with those folks that are here downtown and that we see every day. And then we have the downtown ambassadors, and you've seen them, they're in the yellow shirts, they walk around, they offer services, they offer guidance, they clean up, hoping that they will clean a little bit deeper. We're working on that, but we fund all of those different ways or response models to help with our public safety and unsheltered communities. So we wanted to make sure that you guys knew about that. And I can let somebody else talk, because I didn't take it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Wharton. So I represent District 3, which is Avenues, Capitol Hill, Marmalade, Guadalupe, Fair Park, a little part of Rose Park, Federal Heights. So everything north of South Temple and east of the freeway, except for a little piece of Rose Park. And I just so that you understand that I am seeing the same thing that you're seeing every day. I live in Marmalade, in between downtown and Warm Springs Park and Victory Road, where there is one of the biggest ongoing. So I see all of that. I also work on Main Street and just practically at 2nd South. So I see everything that's going on our Main Street every day. I hear all of the things that are going on out in the street, because I'm only on the 2nd floor. So I'm not in any way removed from what is going on and from what a lot of you are experiencing if you live in the downtown area. And I know how frustrating the problem is, and how it seems like things are moving really slowly. But for purposes of just getting a little bit of perspective, when I was first elected to the council in 2018 was my first year on the council, we really didn't have any of these things that Councilmember Valdemoros just talked about. The city was investing in affordable housing, but not even close to the rate that we're doing now. We didn't have a tiny home village. There was no discussion of that. There was no chat team, which is the alternative response team. We had the Downtown Ambassadors program that was strictly in the Central Business District, and it really was just answering questions from people who were out of town. How do I get to my hotel? Stuff like that. They weren't doing the homeless outreach, and certainly not at the level that they are now. Now we've expanded to all of the downtown area and North Temple. We had basically one shelter, and that was the Road Home. It was one large congregate facility that was overnight. None of the smaller shelters had opened up around the city. And the in-between was still like struggling and looking for a home. Didn't have one yet. And we weren't really there was no talk at all about a sanctioned campground, no serious talk that way at least. And we really weren't putting a lot of our CIP, which is capital improvement project funds, into addressing homelessness. So all of those things have come about in the last several years, which is also when we've been dealing with the pandemic and all the other emergencies that the city dealt with in 2020. And the fact that the population of homelessness that we see in Salt Lake City has been growing during that time. So I know that it feels frustrating, and I know sometimes it feels like we're not making any progress. In fact, sometimes it feels like we're going backwards. But I want you to remember that there are all of these changing dynamics that have been happening over the last several years, and I think it's really easy to lose sight of that when you get into the kind of day-to-day stuff that we see. And so I guess my message is that I understand the frustrations, that I share those frustrations as well, but I also think that we are really truly making a lot of progress on a lot of different fronts. And I think that some of these things that you're going to see coming online, like our Tiny Home Village and our sanctioned campground, which is right now is a pilot program for this year, but which the state is seeking to kind of pick up the ball and take and run with it, that these are going to be programs that are going to be replicated in other cities, and that we really are providing, I think, a good model for how to move forward. It does take a lot of time, and we've really had to shift the approach that we've done to addressing homelessness as well. It's been a paradigm shift and a philosophical shift of what is the best way to move forward, not only with people that are providing direct care to those that are unsheltered, but also a paradigm shift among government leaders at the county and state level who were for so long like, this is a Salt Lake City problem. I don't know why you guys can't fix this. Eventually, I think they noticed that every major city in this country is experiencing the same problem, and it's not just a Salt Lake City problem. It's not just a city problem. This is a national problem that cities everywhere are having to be on the front lines of trying to defend, and I think that's also part of the problem. But I think the ship finally is turned and we're headed in the right direction, and I wish it was happening faster, but from my perspective, I think we really are going in the right direction, and I think that we've seen a lot of progress already. So I just hope you keep that in mind with your comments tonight. Having said that, I know that there'll be criticism, I know that there'll be frustration, and we're here to hear that as well. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Alejandro Pui. I represent a little bit of downtown, a little piece of Fair Park, Glendale, Poplar Grove, and then a little piece of Granary too. I just wanted to just connect with all of you in a humane way, like we are doing here. I mean, we wanted to have this forum, this opportunity to just hear you all and understand your frustrations, and believe me, and if you knew, we have our own, and there are many. One of those is always about how slow everything is, and we being part of government as well, right? And but also to tell you about some of the things that we're doing, not to shift blame or to tell you that everything is fine. We are far from perfect. We have plenty of problems, but we are trying very hard to find solutions to this gigantic problem. And when we are talking about mental health and substance abuse and the housing crisis, we're talking about something that is of pandemic proportions. I mean, we're not talking about something very small. We're talking about something that is affecting every community in the country. I had the opportunity to travel for my other job and for this job to many cities, and every single city is almost struggling with the same issue, especially the capital cities in each state, but also major metropolitan areas. And finding a solution for this is bigger than us. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be trying everything we can. And we're going to be talking about some of the things that we're trying. But I just wanted to start by saying that there's always been homeless people and unsheltered people in Salt Lake City. Always. And not only, if you live in Sandy or in Riverton, maybe you never experienced that before. I'm not picking on those neighbors, that's great people in Sandy and in Riverton, but there's always been unsheltered people. Also COVID made this issue much bigger for us. And also almost lifted the veil on homeless people, on those unsheltered from our eyes. We were treating our homeless and our unsheltered community in our jails. That's how we were treating this issue. We were sending them to jail. And that's really what's been happening for decades. Is that the right place for that? The light has been made, thank you. Is that, so you don't fall asleep after when I'm talking. So is that the place to send those unsheltered? Probably not. And I think COVID sort of like lifted that issue, but we are left with very little solutions. So Operation Rio Grande, if all of you remember, a failure in many ways. It shifted this problem to other neighborhoods. And now many of the neighbors in near Pioneer Park will say this worked out for us, right? So we are having less of issues, right? But it's all in perspective, right? There is bigger issues. My neighbors in my district will argue the opposite of that, right? Now we are seeing a lot of unsheltered neighbors living by the river, right? And being ping-ponged from one corner to another. I just wanted to start there, so I think that those are my basic points. And the other thing is that we need to hear you in every layer of government. We are part of a government that has many layers, and one of those is the county, and one of those is the state, and one of those is our federal government and federal delegation, and all of them need to hear it, including us, right? And we hear it quite often. I'm not gonna lie. Every time that we go to a community council, and I bet I get a couple of emails, more than that, several times a day, several messages about an issue or another. But I want you to know that your county and your state need to hear it too, and your federal delegation need to. This last week, a couple weeks ago, I went with a few other council members. We stepped away from the council. Not all of them could because we had to run the city council here. To go testify in Sandy City Council. They're debating to open a medically vulnerable shelter for those that are suffering from medical conditions. And many of the neighbors in Sandy are freaking out, about this. And we went to tell them that this shelter that they're opening is a non-congregate shelter. It's one of the safest you can open. It's one of the least impactful, if you wish, to the community. But we need every community in the state and in the country to do their part. Last year we heard about Jackson, Wyoming, sending homeless people to Salt Lake City. I called in to City Council in Jackson to say, you guys should do your own thing. Know that we in Salt Lake City and in Utah we're trying our best as well to care for each other. But every single city in this county and in this state needs to do something about this. and again, it's not to shift blame, we should be doing more, we could be doing more, we're trying to learn about things that we could do better, but they're trying new things right now, and I think I probably bored everybody at that point. So thank you.
No, that was great, and just to bring it home as well of what these two guys said, a few years ago, like Chris said, this was just a downtown issue, like we've been told again and again, this is just a Salt Lake City issue, this is a downtown issue, you guys figure it out, and all of that, but truly it's taken a few years to shift, and it's really thanks to us connecting better with our county counterparts, with the League of Cities and Towns, which is an organization that helps all of the cities and all the councils, and they lobby as well at the legislature on behalf of the cities. And it's us also reaching out to our legislators and saying, you can't possibly think that this is just our issue. Like we can't, or you can't possibly think that the Salt Lake City taxpayers are the only ones that can foot this bill for a statewide issue. We need your help. And I think finally that message has gotten across, because a couple of years ago, they asked us to add more people during the winter months at our existing resource centers, and we thought really hard about it. We don't have the manpower to take care of what's happening around the shelters, but we were able to negotiate with them and said, okay, we are probably okay adding a few more beds, but we do need your financing for this and your funding for public safety. And that has translated now to having 6 officers at each of the shelters, monitoring what's happening inside and outside and making sure that peace is being kept. And it's night and day. And yeah, we're adding more people during the winter, but during the day and during the summer months, things are looking way better than what they used to. After that legislation, the representative Elison, which has been working very hard on this, he decided that he saw that Salt Lake City couldn't bear the whole pressure of this and the whole charge of this, and so he commended, I'm not sure if it's commended, but you made a rule that now Utah County and Davis County needed to come up with a winter overflow plan for their counties. And that is huge. That for us, it's huge. We've been told in front of our faces, this is not, like literally, this is not some county issue, this is your issue, Salt Lake City council members, figure it out. And so to us, that's monumental, and I think it's going to keep increasing as we get more people involved in terms of county and state to really look at this as a statewide issue, and I think it's promising. I know it's slow, we talked about it, but I feel like it's very, very promising. So obviously we need your feedback and we need your push as well with your reps that are beyond the council to help us to put that pressure. So anyway, one thing, so you might want to hear about housing and the housing crisis and what Salt Lake City does for housing. So in the last few years, Salt Lake City trying to close the housing gap, which is about 5,500 units. And every dollar that we spend is geared towards that, whether it be at the 80% AMI, 60% AMI, 20% AMI, all of the AMIs that you can think of, which are usually lower income, and we've spent over $20 million this past few years, and you can...
To add really quick, so that people know, that the city can't just say, you have to build affordable units. We can't tell a private developer or a private landowner, you must build affordable housing. We can't say, if you're going to build a new building, you must make this many of the units affordable. The only thing that we are allowed to do under state law, which in Utah, cities only have the authority that it is explicitly given to them by the state. And so we are allowed to say, if you're coming to the city and you're asking the city for something, like a zoning change, or if you're asking the city for help with some kind of financing, that's when we can say, okay, we will do that, but in as part of that agreement, you need to set aside this many units or whatever. So we can't do that. I get that question a lot. We do, like, there are apartments being built everywhere. I drive all over and all these apartments are being, like, why is there an affordability problem? Well, first of all, vast majority of those are market rate. The majority of those are already, all of the leases are full by the time the building opens. So those are getting bought up. And most of them have not come to the city with any request or any zoning change. They can build by right on that land, and so they're not part of the discussion about affordability. We also, under state law, are not allowed to do rent control, and that we're basically not allowed, there's not we've been told that if we try to pass inclusionary zoning, that will be preempted, which means an explicit ban. So we can't really do that either. So we're very, very limited to incentive-based programs or programs where the city owns the land and we're able to, but we don't, as a city, we don't have a housing program like some other cities have, where they actually manage the leases and find the people that go in. The city doesn't have that in Utah. And so we have to contract with developers or contract with service providers to build the building and then provide the service. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's great.
That was a long footnote.
No, totally fine, and I think that's what we tried. That's why we've invested over $20 million a year in housing, to have those funds so that when a developer comes to us, or a nonprofit, or other homeless services groups that are trying to do housing come to us, we have that. I don't want to call it the upper hand, but we have that tool to say, we'll consider, your request, because we're definitely into affordable housing and we need it. So most likely we're in, but we need you to for sure have certain AMIs included, for sure keep it for a long time, and more recently we would like you guys to do more of family-size housing and perhaps affordable homeownership versus the studios and the one bedrooms that you're building. We funded those left and right, I feel like, and we need to also tackle some of the other issues. And I think it's been a change as well with this council, where we're thinking, gee, we do a lot of rental, like financing. How else can we help people? Because given the housing market and the crisis, a lot of people won't be able to afford anything for a long time. And how can we help or provide a tool to make that kind of change? And so right now, when people come and talk to us about housing and housing funding, we'll give priority to those that are 3 or 4 family-sized units. And then if you have an affordable home ownership project, which usually is 80% or maybe below, you qualify for the workforce especially, will be happier to do that than just a rental unit. And so I know the mayor and has proposed other ways of helping families and the workforce build wealth, which is the Perpetual Housing Fund. We talked about it a little bit in our past meetings. It's still developing, but it's a similar kind of program where you are a renter, but at the end of your rent, or however that is, you might get some of that equity, so you can actually go to a down payment for a home somewhere else. So your rent doesn't really go to just the maintenance of the building. It's actually, you can take some of that with you as you invested in that building. So those are some of the cool tools that we're trying to work on, but they're always incentive, like he said, like these are, we hope and we wish, and we don't do, we don't do any candles, we don't have rituals to ask them to manifest that people will say this. Maybe you do at home, I don't know. I do other things, but yeah, not exactly that, but yeah, it might be a finance. But that's what we try, and so this is how we do the housing, incentivizing, coming up with all sorts of ideas on how to help with the housing crisis. Okay. some people will ask us, and I know we had that question, but we can talk about other alternative housing options for our sheltered neighbors. And that's, let's see what time it is. Yeah. And that's the latest, the newest, the coolest thing that we've come up with, at least in my view. We heard from the people that are working within sheltered communities day in and day out, with our police officers, with our chat groups, with all of the people that are involved in providing, trying to help trying to provide help for the sheltered neighbors, that there is a resistance. Some folks will not take don't take their help. Like, they will not accept the help, their resources, etc. And it's for a million reasons. We can't list them all here. You may imagine why. And so, but that doesn't mean that they can still stay, in those conditions in our streets. It's not humane. I worry every day that I see certain people in certain states, that what's going to happen to that person tonight, tomorrow. Will a predator come over? These are very vulnerable people that are saying no to help, but we cannot force them. So we decided that perhaps if we created lower, like non-congregate, and I talk about the sanction company, but you can talk about the one in your district. Anyway, how can we create something where we can help another 50 people to get off of the street? That instead of moving them around, as you know, the abatements happen when they start congregating too many tents in certain streets, in certain sidewalks, that becomes dangerous and sanitary. It's a hazard for everyone, sheltered and unsheltered. How can we provide some sort of space for them to be, that they might say yes, and they can go to a place that is really, really safe for them, and give them a little bit of breathing room, and not be as chaotic, or not being worried about where's my stuff going to go tonight? Will I come back from work and is everything gone? Or do people steal? Or do people break into my tent as I sleep? It's pretty chaotic, the situation. Also where the bathrooms are, etc. All of those things. And so one of the things that the council been thinking about it, and we've been thinking about it because it's, we were, maybe I speak for myself, I was worried about the logistics of having an outdoor sanctioned campground, which was announced a couple of weeks ago, which will happen on 600 West and 300 South. It's a temporary outdoor sanctioned campground. We're going to allow it to be there for 6 months in partnership with the state, to see if we can help another 50 people live that situation that they're in, which is very bad. And so for a long time, I was one of the ones that I was very hesitant about it, because what I've seen outside the resource centers, I'm like, I don't think, we haven't been able to do our job, greatly. Can we get into this business? But I did, thanks to Councilmember Puy and his insistence, we had the chance to go to Denver in May, and we visited one of the outdoor shelters that they have. They're called Safe Outdoor Spaces. And we showed up unannounced, essentially. We didn't tell them that we were going. We just drove in. I couldn't even see what it was, to be honest with you. It's right there. So it was a campground, 30 tents, up to 50 people, a safe place where people that need that breathing room, low barrier, regardless of your addiction or regardless of your mental illness. You could go in there, give a little bit of breathing room, and figure out what's next in your life. With social workers helping you, with peers there to help you talk through and think about what are the external barriers for the situation that I'm in, but also the internal barriers. What else is it that is not allowing me to get help? that you need. And I feel like that's only possible if you are in a safe space, where you don't have to worry about somebody stealing your stuff, or that you have to go to work and you don't know if your staff is going to be there, or if you're sleeping at night and somebody's going to break into your tent, and who knows what's going to happen to you. So that really sealed the deal for me, and we lobbied the rest of our council members to see if we could make this a reality. We started with $250,000, and then the council said perhaps we do $500,000 and pilot this along with the state. So that's going to open in November, 600 West, 300 South. They're working on the providers, they're working on all of the logistics, and that's why you won't see a lot of people outside in the streets. Some of the streets will be closed because we really need a safe place for these folks that want to get into a safe space. So with that, I know there are other things that you might want to say.
Oh yeah. Just a quick note on that. I think that let me say this. Most of us are not mental health professionals. I mean, I'm not. And most of the city employees are not mental health professionals or substance abuse professionals or professionals on homelessness of any kind. So I will just say this for myself, and we shouldn't be running shelters. We shouldn't be running anything like that because we don't have the expertise nor the experience to do so. So this is where some of the hesitancies where is this something that we can do, right? But there's already in the community experts. So when I visited the Denver Safe Outdoor Spaces SOS sites, I was fascinated by the success stories of when you're worried about where your next meal comes from or just to keep warm at night, there is nothing else that really matters. I just cannot even imagine how that is to some people in our streets. So if we can hopefully remove some of that barrier first, and some of them may be ready for the next step. So again, this is a pilot program, and the reason why it's a pilot program is why it's not Salt Lake City running it is because Salt Lake City, we need other communities to do this too, again, and I mentioned this before, we need the layers of government that have the tax dollars for this, the Health and Human Services, which is the county and the state, they should actually be paying for these things. And in this case, fortunately, the state is actually partnering with us on this for a temporary basis to prove the concept, to prove to the neighbors that are scared, the house neighbors that are scared, to say, look, this is a concept that could work. It could work in your neighborhood. And in Denver, we proved this point. They proved the point, and the neighbors that were concerned now, they're asking for the safe outdoor spaces back into their neighborhoods. Again, I don't think that this is a solution that works. None of the solutions work, but we need all the solutions out there.
Summer, and those were barriers that we just couldn't afford, and until we built these partnerships. So that was another reason for the delay on the sanctioned camping in Salt Lake.
Yeah, and I think that this is a success, and I hope that this is a success, and that we can go in other communities in every county in the state. We can see all the layers, all the options. When we were testifying in Sandy for the medically vulnerable shelter, and I don't know if they voted yet on that council in Sandy. The Representative Eliasson showed up, who is leading the charge on the state on homeless initiatives, and he said that on the system that they tracked, there is about, if I remember right, there was 300 neighbors from Sandy that they had at some point a residence in Sandy that there are in the streets in Salt Lake City. At some point or another, not in a given moment. To basically illustrate the point that in every community in the state, we have unsheltered folks for one reason or another. This last week in our council meeting, they talked about how many people in our city are barely making it, very close to not make it to rent, make rent at the end of the month. And I remember it was like 50% or something crazy like that. I mean, imagine how easy it is for maybe one of us end up in the streets. So every community needs to step up and try something in their own community as well. Chris, you mentioned the Other Side Village. The Other Side Village is, you probably know about the Other Side Academy. They are an organization here in town with the mayor. They worked out on a piece of land in my district, in District 2 in Indiana, and to open a village, a teeny home community, tiny home community, teeny. I learned this week, teeny, tiny. This week, I'm constantly learning new words or how to pronounce them correctly. So if you need subtitles, you can ask me later. It's a tiny home community, and it's pre-built, giving houses to those that go through the program. Another option, the city partnering, owning the land, giving the land for $1 a year to this organization to test this concept in various stages. And we are giving it in one stage now. There is some details in there. Oh no, maybe not. Yeah, there is some. They are right now, I learned, they're remediating the land. They're doing some remediation. This land wasn't great. Well, there's pieces of the land that are still good, but they're doing some cleanup right now. And hopefully in the spring, this is what I've been told. Again, this is an organization that is running this. They're going to have some of the pots. They're already built, several of them, so they just need to move them in once that's done. Then there is the common areas that are going to be built immediately after. But it's a good test of the housing, all the different kinds of housing. We broke the microphone. That's what we did. Probably we should stop talking. It's another idea from a community organization saying we need this type of housing, we need some faster. Obviously, this government is, getting something done in a couple of years. When you hear something from the city, it feels like fast, and I'm like shocked every time that's fast, but that's what it is.
No, it's not. Don't want to break a nail. Only this is the frustrating thing too about the tiny home village is like the places that we were having to choose from. I mean, the land that the city owns and controls is typically either encumbered, is like already planned for some other public use, has already gone through a public process, so we can't really just be like, hey, we're gonna do something different, we changed our minds. Or it needs to be remediated. That's how a lot of land comes into the city's possession, is that it was contaminated from a dry cleaning business, or it was an old landfill, or whatever. So we don't have the most choice pieces of land always to build on. And so a lot of it is figuring out like how much money can we put into it just so that the soil is not toxic, and then build on top of that. So. But let's do some questions. Okay. Yeah.
So so we're gonna do the Q&As. So if you submitted a question, Priscilla will randomly choose the question, and then we'll answer.
Right. First question: what resources, assistance, and long-term facilities are available to address homelessness caused by mental health issues?
Yeah, I can answer just a few, and I think Ali also has some more info on the county. So we know that the county is in charge of that. I also know that we have CDBG, which is federal funding that we review every year. So different organizations that do mental health services would come over and would apply for it, and then it goes through a citizens process, selection, then the mayors select, and then ultimately we decide on those funds. And I know that every year we try to help most of those that are doing mental health services. So as you can see, we cannot do it directly with your taxpayers' dollars, but because we get funding from the federal government, we can do that way. And we do, some of the organizations that I know, First Step House, they do a lot of substance abuse and mental health services and housing. Valley Mental Health, Odyssey House, WYCA, the VOA, Road Home, all of those.
Housing Authority. But just something that the state homeless coordinator shared with us is that the majority of people who are experiencing homelessness, I forget exactly what the statistics are, but it's like 2/3, have been housed at some point and have lost that because there were certain rules that they had to follow that they didn't follow, or that there were certain qualifications that they had to meet that they either became disqualified from. So there are these really big cracks, and a lot of times once somebody has been kicked out, for example, from a housing authority project, they're not welcome back into another housing authority project. Or if First Step House, if you break their rules and you get kicked out, they're not gonna let you back into First Step House. So trying to design something that catches people that have kind of gone through a lot of options, and sometimes it's just they don't qualify anymore for one reason or another, and so we have to find, okay, do they go now to Section 8, or do we direct them here or direct them there? And so that is hard because you're dealing with, these cases are very different based on the individual and the circumstances.
No, I mean, I don't know if I have anything to add to that, but there is not enough. Not nearly enough. There is a gigantic hole in funding on mental health and substance abuse and in housing all across the board. So if there is one thing you could do today is to message your legislator, to message your county representative, to message your federal delegation as well. You know, every single, and don't message, if you live downtown, don't message the ones here though. I mean, sure, CC them, they're fine, they're already okay with that. The older ones, the older legislators from a little outside this area, I mean, really need to hear it. So just, we need that pressure, we need to be, you know, I mean, Anna, the first time we went to DC, we got to DC once for the league, the NLC, National League of Cities. We talked to our federal delegation to talk about the issues that we're dealing with and to try to haggle for some funding. I mean, they're all for re-election every 2 years, well, the House members, so they are trying to get things funded in each congressional district. It's a game, it's an interesting thing, it's an interesting game. But one of the things that so shocked me about Anna is that the first year we went to, she was talking about mental health. What are you doing about mental health? We have a mental health crisis. Every single one of them, you were not a broken record. But it really is, we need to be talking about this with every single legislator in all layers of government, as mental health and substance abuse and housing, and we cannot stop. So I don't think that answers the question. The unfortunate part of that answer is that it's not enough.
So just the options are though, depending on, you know, there's federal money from HUD, which is typically referred to as Section 8 or sometimes referred to as Section 8. There are private facilities that can take people that don't qualify for Section 8. And sometimes you have to specifically be disqualified from Section 8. And then there's always a waiting list as well. So people, sometimes if you're on a waiting list for one, you won't be given you won't be on the list for the other. You have to just be homeless until a unit opens up because there's too many people, there's too many lists. So so other than those two, like those are really the only two for mental health that are long-term.
Next question. How is the city addressing potential risks to the areas surrounding the new temporary shelter and existing homeless resource centers?
We did kind of talk about it. So the resource centers do have police officers right now funded by the state remember we talked about negotiating that if we're gonna open more beds during the winter, that we need some of the help. So that is underway, it's already happening. And then I know that the temporary shelter outdoor in 600 West, some of the streets will be closed. 500 West, which used to have a lot of the encampments, is going to be 500 West between, I'm gonna say, second south to fourth south. From what I heard, will be closed, so that, 500 West, between the Rio Grande area.
Oh,
The
right,
streets,
yeah, okay,
the
yeah,
streets,
yeah,
or at
sorry,
least the median,
Yep.
so that we can monitor, and truly, we want the predators out. At least that's my wish and my concern, and my desire with saying yes to all of this is, I want the predators out of our neighborhoods, go somewhere else, but not here. You need to leave these people alone. The 50 people that are trying to figure out what's going on in their lives, they need some breathing room. You can't be there like vultures around them, so whatever it takes.
Sorry.
I was just.
Okay, so we're still working the details out with the state, and I think one of the questions to the provider, and it's not Salt Lake City who's gonna run this thing, is, what is your plan to keep safety inside, to make sure that everybody's safe inside? The last thing you want is someone getting hurt inside. We want to prove concept here too. We want to make sure that it's safe for those in there. We want to make sure it's safe for the community around there. Those are questions that are very important. I hope that we can see one of these ones in Provo one day, right? I hope we can see one of these ones in Riverton one day. I keep picking up on Riverton for some reason today. But and for that, we need to make sure that this one is a success. So I think that's our commitment, and it's the state's commitment too. And Senator Niederhauser, former Senator Niederhauser, who leads the fact that we have a homeless director in the state level is a huge deal. I'm not gonna lie. It might not feel like a lot, but the fact that a conservative-led state is actually talking about this and actually created a department within the administration with staff and some funding. He has to fight for it every year in the legislature. The fact that that is happening is a huge deal. And the fact that the conversation now is not about what Salt Lake City and I'm gonna use this word, the liberals are doing in Salt Lake City to mess everything up. The conversation is shifting about, oh, this is a big problem. And I heard from some legislators ourselves that they have family members that they are, dealing with substance abuse and mental health issues. So this crosses party lines. This is not an issue, of one party. This is not an issue of a religion, right? This is an issue that crosses all things. So now that this is happening, I feel like we have momentum to talk seriously about what is happening and what we need. Safety, for sure, but we need a lot more than that.
Awesome, next question. Why doesn't the city enforce the no camping statute? And why doesn't it apply to all city sidewalks and streets?
Okay, that's a great question. First of all, we do enforce the no camping ordinance. It there's not a blanket enforcement, and this is why. So there's a case that goes back all the way to 2014. It's called Martin versus City of Boise, and in that case, the Ninth Circuit, which is the circuit next door to us and all around us, it's like a C shape around us, said that it's under the 8th Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment to enforce a no camping ordinance if you have vacancies, or if you don't have vacancies in the shelter. And so you basically are barred from enforcing unless you can guarantee a bed for everyone that's on the street. And you may remember that when we were all talking about opening the shelters, the decentralized model, the three new shelters, the city strenuously opposed closing and demolishing the road home because we said we're short, like about 400 beds, the math doesn't work. And the decision was made over the city's objection to close the road home and demolish it anyway. And now we are in a situation where we cannot, on those nights, cannot enforce the camping ordinance because we can't guarantee that there are beds. It's a lot more complicated too when you are trying to figure out whether the 3 shelters, whether there are beds, and then the laws change every year about how many beds we can go above capacity. And so before the legislature changed the law, we couldn't go above capacity and we wouldn't go above capacity. Then they wanted to get rid of it so that there wasn't even, the first proposal didn't even have a carve out for fire code. They were like, you can as many beds as you can fit. And we were pushed hard against that to say we really need to follow the fire code first. So then there's that case. Then there have been subsequent cases since then, but this is kind of, let's see, there are other barriers in addition to that, that are, we can't just take, the only place that we can take someone with, if they were refusing to close down their camp, is jail. That's the only place. If they are passed out, or if they're experiencing a medical emergency, we can take them to a hospital, and the hospital can hold them until they're treated, and then they have to be released. And so we don't have the authority under the Constitution and the laws of this state to tell people to go, we can't force them to go somewhere else unless that place is jail. We don't control the jail. The jail is controlled by the county. And the who stays in jail is often decided on by the county, the sheriff, and by judges. We don't control the judges. The judges decide, and they decide based on a priority of who is most violent and the biggest threat to the community about who gets held in jail. So a lot of times when people are saying, you're not enforcing no camping ordinances, even if we took all of those people down to the jail and they were all released, they would be back at the campsite by the time the cops were, before the cops were done filling out the paperwork for what just happened. That is not the best use of your taxpayer money, because that costs a lot, and all of those things that when we talk about the barriers that people have to getting into housing programs, all of those times that they get taken down to the jail or they get booked and released, those add up and make it harder for them to get into permanent housing, especially the housing that's very competitive that we're talking about. So there is a calculation that has to be made about the no camping ordinance. So it's not that we just have abandoned the no camping ordinance, it's that we have to make decisions about the best use of taxpayer money in any given situation. And sometimes the best use, frequently the best use, is not to go and arrest these individuals. There's also like humane considerations too, that we don't want to, we get beaten up about this a lot by, I guess, certain critics, which I understand, that the issue about whether or not property has been abandoned, and whether it's something that we can clean up and throw away, or whether it's property that somebody has just temporarily left, and are we throwing away somebody's house? Are we throwing away the only shelter that they have? Are we throwing away the only sleeping bag they have? Any possessions that they have, are we throwing those away? And we don't want to be in a position of, if a person is gonna go get taken to jail, get booked and released, and they're gonna come back, we don't want to leave them without a tent and without a sleeping bag so that they're gonna freeze to death that night. And trying to figure that out is a logistical nightmare. We also have, in Salt Lake City, one of the programs we did have when I first came on the council is we do have a program where we store people's things so that if they agree to come into a shelter, or if they agree to come and seek services, we will store their items for them for a period of time. But they have to comply, and they have to do the things that they agreed to do in order to get their stuff back. And a lot of times they choose not to do that. And so then we have a lot of stuff that we're in the position of having to decide when do we throw that away to make room for the next person who's making promises that they're gonna improve, versus how long do we hold on to it? All of those things is a big calculation that's really also very hard to coordinate, because again, we're trying to do programs to plug up the holes and do what we can where we can, but we don't control the whole system. So it's hard to make all of those pieces fit together.
I just wanted to add that the shelters right now are, the Geraldine King Women's Center is 100% full right now, the 200 beds. The Gail Miller Resource Center is 100% full, 200 beds. And the Men's Resource Center right now is 300 beds and is 98% full. And this is a dashboard that the city has live every day for our teams on the streets to find out if they can house someone immediately, if someone is willing to go to a shelter right now.
Last question. What are your measures for success for the temporary shelter?
My measure is that, you know, after the 6 months are over, that we have been able to help the majority of those, I hope 75%, to go to the next step, which is the other other outdoor safe space, if you will, that Wayne Leader House and the state are working on, which is a little bit more long-term. There's gonna be more units and more shelter units for that, but it's like the next step if we cannot find a housing for them, that they will still be housed, but not necessarily in the one here downtown. So, and then, another measure of success is that we are, in the national news, like, again, about trying everything that we can. I know that chat team, for example, has been Fire Chief Carl Lieb. He's been contacted by several fire chiefs along in the country to talk about the chat services and how it works, and see if they can plagiarize our idea and make it happen. Their community is about one of those cities is Philadelphia, and if you know the issues in Philadelphia, there are some rough areas over there. So that's some of my measures of success, and also make enough noise that the governor, that the state representatives, that the counties are saying, gee, this was a great idea, let's fund it, or let's go and do a few more in other cities.
I think one of the measures, obviously, the human impact on those individuals is, first and foremost, that there's no more underlining to that. I hope that, they feel safe and they can go to the next step, and, they don't have to talk about that anymore. But there's other things that I hope we can accomplish is prove to the other cities too that they can do something like this. Prove that it can be done, prove that the county and the city and the state can work together on something without calling each other names and without, blaming each other about something, but we can actually get on the table and find something and do it quick. This has been done quick. And yes, I know that many in the community are frustrated because they've been calling for this for years. But we are moving the needle fast on this issue. So that, to me, that is huge. Also to talk to my neighbors and say, look, I know that you are struggling with some of these issues in your neighborhood. And many of my families in my district are having 2 or 3 jobs to survive, right? And they rely on our public spaces very heavily. We need safe parks, right? We need inviting places, and they deserve that too. So hopefully they can see this as a solution and help us as a city to make a bigger case to other layers of government. And I keep on saying that, but it really is not, I cannot tell you enough how much more we need the help from everybody else, because Salt Lake City cannot do this alone.
So for me, I think, safety, and make sure that people are are warm, that people are not being preyed upon, that they're not experiencing crime within the camp. I want it to be clean, and make sure that it's not just clean as in like sanitary, but I think it needs to be tidy. I hope that the residents start to take ownership of the camp. And then I think to have a place where people who are willing to go into services or who are willing to be convinced to go into services, to have the ability to find them in a consistent location, and go and continue to talk to them, because I think that having that consistency is really important. And then to those that are gonna be shelter resistant and are never gonna want to go into a shelter or a congregate setting or whatever, that those individuals at least make it easier to administer the services that those individuals might qualify for in a consistent way and in a consistent location. And then of course, I would love it, I think we talk a lot about wanting this to be replicated, and that's not an ego thing, it's that that is how, as I said before, a lot of cities have done this and it has not gone well, and it's exacerbated the problems or whatever, and I don't wanna have that for our residents, I don't wanna have that for the residents of the camp. And I think that when you see people being willing to replicate it in other cities, that means that we have put in a lot of careful consideration, and we've done a lot of the work to make sure that it was a success. So to me, that's a testament to the work that's gone into it from the community. Are we really that was no more questions? But how long does this event go?
It was supposed to be 1 hour, but it's
Oh, whoops.
okay.
Oh,
I'm still here, so perhaps.
I'll be here all night, so,
There's
sure.
one question here.
Real quick, is there something being discussed or voted on tomorrow at the council?
So tomorrow we're talking about the affordable housing incentives, which is a citywide program that would offer more streamlined changes, and the opportunity to gently add density to certain areas depending on what the scale of the project is and what the area is. But the focus is on gentrification. And they said, one of the big issues with you in Utah is that it used to be that there were parts of Salt Lake City that were more affordable than other parts, and then that there were places in the community surrounding Salt Lake that were more affordable than other parts. Now, really, the Wasatch Front is pretty much all one kind of market, and it's all full. So, where you used to be able to move to another community and maybe afford something there, that's becoming less and less of an option in not just Salt Lake County, but in all of the Wasatch Front counties. And that's where, 2/3 or more of our population lives. So it's hard because we have an anti-gentrification and displacement plan, but we also live in a place with wall-to-wall cities. And if those cities also don't have anti-gentrification and displacement plans, it's not gonna work. So we wanna have a plan that we can roll out that is gonna be a good plan that can be replicated in other cities to try to prompt solving this problem regionally. Yeah.
I'd like to preface this by saying about 4 years ago, I was under contract and still am with Getty Images out of New York to gather images of a story that was going to essentially talk about the failure of the Operation Rio plan. Since that time, I have become, even outside the world of my professional work, been very, very deeply involved with the homeless community, hands-on in this town. And during the process, I visited 20 other cities around the country to see, and all of these assignments were on a professional basis, but the point I wanted to make, and I've followed this very closely, you've talked a little bit tonight about all the good stuff, all the support, a lot of cosmetic discussion. My concern tonight, what is the council going to do? What is the mayor going to do? What is anybody going to do about these horrific abatements that are taking place with the homeless community? I've been there, I've seen them, I've talked to the homeless folks, I've captured images that have been circulated at requests all over the country. And the net result has been a horrendous reputation that has been developed, unfortunately, by Salt Lake City for what this particular procedure has done to the homeless community. Let me add a footnote to that. Just recently, over the last 2 to 3 weeks, the abatement procedures and this rapid intervention team, I think that's a bit of a misnomer, have absolutely attacked at every level, at every location, the homeless community. Many of the things that you've talked about tonight have happened. So much more has not happened. Beyond the Rio building where the Rio restaurant used to be, enforcement by armies of cops, abatement personnel from the health department. It's a horrific experience. I don't know if you've ever been there hands-on when this takes place.
Yeah, we all go to.
If you haven't, I can display exactly what happens, how it happens, the abusive and horrific procedure that takes place to these folks. And of course, tonight they've relocated again, but now the city is putting fences up around some of the areas to physically keep them out and move them away up the Jordan River, which has right now the attendance of homeless, the largest that it's ever been. Over at Camp Pioneer that it was known at, there's 5 or 6 people that are over there, and these people were all abated. If you want to see the detail, I'll be glad to share it with you. But I want to know right now, tonight, tomorrow, what's going to take place to get people like Officer Dunn of the Salt Lake Police Department under control and to get rid of this horrific citywide attack on the homeless community.
Okay, so that's a great question, and the abatements, they feel a lot like, pushing the peas around the plate. And I know that it's also frustrating because, we've all seen those images of things getting thrown away, of people being displaced, people saying, I don't have anywhere to go. But the decision about an abatement is an intergovernmental decision. It's not a Salt Lake City decision. We're part of the deciders. But the way that it works is that the health department determines when a camp has become to the point that it's unsanitary and then must be abated. By law, our job is to ensure the peace and safety of any government worker within our jurisdiction. So they call and say to the city, this is the camp we're going to abate. You need to have police officers there. The police officers come. It's the police officer's job to make sure that the law is followed. In this case, the county deciding to abate the camp before an abatement happens. And then if there is, if there are law enforcement issues, I haven't been to every camp abatement, so I can't, and I've heard lots of stories. I'm not. It's not that I haven't heard, and I also haven't seen pictures and lots of evidence about things that have happened at abatements. But the vast majority of the abatements, before that happens, before that decision is made, is that the county, through their health workers, we, the city, through our staff and our providers, our partners in the community, Volunteers of America, things like that, go out to the camps, provide notice that this camp is gonna be abated, we provide written notice and verbal notice. We have a resource fair. At the same time, at the resource fair, you could come, there are judges, there are defense attorneys, you can get warrants taken care of, you can get past criminal history fines, you can get taken care of there, right there. You can have your court case right there. We have people from the county so that you can sign up for services through the county. We have different nonprofits available that are providing services there. You can get food, you can get all sorts of other items at those abatements, or at those fairs before the abatement leading up to it, so that nobody's surprised that the abatement is happening. And as I said before, that there are places that if you're willing to go into services, that the city will store your stuff for a certain amount of time, if you follow the rules of the program. And so a lot of the things that are being thrown away, and I'm not saying that we get this right every time, but a lot of the stuff that's being thrown away has been abandoned. Or there are people that, that have basically left it behind, and we still have to abate that. Once everybody's cleared out, we have to get rid of all of the trash. And it's, we provide the dumpsters, we provide lots of other options, but nobody likes nobody thinks that this is pointing to this and saying, this is working, I'm happy with the way this is going. That's the system that we have, that's our statutory mandate, and we try to do the best we can to resolve that. And, sorry.
As someone who has worked with these people for 25 years, everything that Bernie is saying is true, and everything that you're saying is true. Here's where the ball is getting from. Oh, yes, there are people there. You're talking about people who have cognitive presence to follow it through. So what happens is exactly what Bernie's saying.
Yeah.
Everything that they had an hour ago, they don't have now. And they have nowhere to go. Because most of them are cognitively just trashed. And so basically it adds up to nothing but grief. And all the other things sound good. In fact, if we even had these for people who were partly cognitively restored, we would be in a much different place. But the problem is, why don't we have Medicaid treatment centers that are totally funded by Medicaid, because everybody on the street qualifies for Medicaid? And the answer is because we have a legislature that does not understand about Medicaid. We even had money that had to go back for vouchers, for housing vouchers.
Yes.
Because we didn't qualify to disperse them, because we didn't have licensed case managers.
Yes.
We don't have these creatures, and they're at the bottom of all of our trouble.
Yeah. Well, and we had to do a ballot initiative just to make the legislature accept the Medicaid that we'd already paid for.
Well, the Medicaid, but that's part of our Medicaid that went back too. I mean, it's sitting there, but our treatment centers have to have licensed providers, just like doctors, just like nurses, and we don't have them in Utah. And that's another long story.
Yeah.
If you had a half an hour, I'll take it. But we don't. And as long as we don't, we will never have enough money to solve these problems or people to provide solutions.
Okay, this has been waiting for a while. I think we should answer his question. Last one, okay.
So, Anna, you mentioned you want the predators out. I don't think there's anybody in this room who doesn't want the predators out. You three as elected officials, what specifically are each of you doing personally to get them out?
To get the predators out.
It's one thing to want them out. What are you doing to actually get them out?
Well, good question. So
Can you repeat the question?
the question is like, what are we doing nobody wants predators out in our streets. And so I said that I didn't want predators around the Section campground. So what are we doing about it in general? It's not just the campground,
Not in general, specific
to the campground
to the
in general.
shelters, on the streets, everything.
Right, right. Well, good question. The council, as I mentioned earlier, we legislate and we also take care of the budget. So we decide on budgets for the city. So mayors come over and say, I need X amount of money to run the police department, X amount to run the fire, X amount to do the streets, X amount for the lights, X amount for the parks, The last 4 years, what we've been doing is funding our public safety the most. I think a third, if not more, goes to, a third of the $400 million budget that we have goes to public safety. So we are, we're invested in public safety, and we talk about alternative response models so that the money goes a little bit further. And we talk to our mayor or any mayor often about it, where we see a problem, or I don't know if it's a problem, but where we're kind of stuck in a way, is that we don't execute on how the police department goes about keeping the predators away. So basically, what I can tell you is, I would love to have a cop, in every corner to keep the predators away. We could do it if, depending on how much it costs, but I cannot tell any mayor that that's how they need to do it. And that's a big issue, especially for small businesses, owners like myself, where you make the calls, but in this position that I'm at, I'm just the legislative body and saying yes to money because the other branch is the one that executes and makes the calls. But trust me, I haven't done anything but fund our public safety since day one. Even when we had people call us names and ask us to defund the police, we've been there straight up with them. This is a mandate, this is something that we want, and this is something that I will fund forever, as long as I'm in office.
I think bringing our police officer, rebuilding our police force, because like a lot of cities, we had a huge, we were just hemorrhaging loss of officers. And it took a lot of work, and by that I mean a lot of money, that we had to find to bring us back, to get officers to want to come back. And this wasn't just a Salt Lake City problem. Every major city through COVID and through 2020 and 2021 saw major drops in their police force. And so we had to become top of market again. We had to get the highest paid police officers. We had to have the best benefits. And that's not a decision that you can make overnight. You got to have the money to pay for it. And we didn't exactly have a lot of extra money to start with. So that's been our main thing, is rebuilding our police force. The other is that the mayor has done his work with the U.S. Attorney for Utah, and have a closer partnership with U.S. Marshals, who are focusing more on the interstate and international criminal activity that you see, cartels, human trafficking, things like that. We didn't have that level of collaboration before 2020, and now we do. So those are the main, like, in terms of specifics, that's what we're doing. Trying to find the money every single year to remain competitive and remain top of market, and make sure that we have the best benefits so that we can get the best police officers that are gonna do the work, a lot of the casework and the investigation that it takes to follow up on the criminal activity happening in the camps.
I just wanted to briefly say that all the police academies are full now. So we have several classes graduating right now. Many of them are right now on the streets that are pair up for another few months with, and we are doing incredible movement on this. My community in District 2 is asking for safety, very much so. And on the west side of Salt Lake City, they want safer communities, right? And we are giving them that. We are also giving them a diverse police force that reflects the communities that they serve. For the first time, they're actually making an effort and hiring from within the community to actually reflect the communities. I had another point. Oh yes, you know, screening all of these alternative response teams, which are the way of dealing with this and focusing the police on the criminal activity, but not on the mental health crisis and these other problems that need to be dealt in a different manner. But let me say this, there is a flyer over there. This community council, I went to my community council last week, that's the one. I went to my community council last week. We have community councils that we attend to talk to our neighbors, and we were to one that we share, and I went to another one. We got drilled about some safety issues in my community. Anna is right. We, as the council, doesn't dictate how the administration does things. We cannot tell the chief or any other department, you should do this. We only talk as much as policy and then money, right? Those are the only two places we can, but we have a good administration that sits with us and says, okay, what is your community telling you? Can we work with that and create a policy, or work in changing how we're doing things without changing the policy? But the community, my community was asking for more presence. And lately, at the last budget, last year we funded more cameras to dissuade some of those corners that become some of those drug markets. And let me just say about drugs though, most people that are using drugs have houses. Just so you know. Most people that are using and consuming drugs and buying them in North Temple or in the ballpark right now have houses. And they are your neighbors. Just so you remember this. Just so you know. Most people that are using drugs right now have houses.
Talk
And
about
they're
the
using.
percentage of the homeless that are using drugs.
That is true,
That's what
but people that have houses are also using drugs and that are buying them in my neighborhood and creating havoc and creating a market. And that market needs to be disturbed. That market needs to be out of my neighborhood. And that's what we focus on. And the administration is opening a substation in downtown to bring more safety to Main Street, to the downtown district. We're bringing a substation to North Temple to break down that market that creates guns, that creates persecution, that they're shooting at each other. All of this needs to stop. And we need to be able to separate those that are dealing with drugs and they're creating this criminal element from those that need help and they're suffering in the streets, and we need to separate those two. And yes, there is some overlapping, but again, most people that are using drugs have houses, and we all know them, so it's just that. And there is this flyer over here that we put in there. If you see something, say something. I mean, like, it really is. Some of the neighbors, and this is the point when I brought my brain, this is what I had for dinner. One second, sorry. My community council was telling me about a few drug houses where apparently there might be some drugs being manufactured. And the police learned about those in the meeting or heard more about those in the meeting, and they needed more details. But you can actually report that, and we need everybody to be part of the solution. Because we shouldn't have drug houses in any neighborhood, in a residential neighborhood. That flyer is there.
I was on the corner of 100 South and Main Street.
Can we talk
in front of
right
Starbucks,
here?
when a homeless person assaulted a lady pushing her baby carriage, I had to intervene. A policeman was coming down the street. I stopped him, got him out of my car, pointed out that person that had threatened that lady with her baby. I intervened at the risk of my life and pointed it out to that cop to go address that person. You know what he did, that policeman? He asked for my information. As we watched that predator get on tracks, which is basically a public mobile homeless shelter, and drive away and flip us the bird on the way to town. What are you doing to get these police to actually enforce the law? Not ask for my information, but go after the predators.
Thank you. That's really good feedback. That's something that we can certainly, the more of these stories and anecdotes and experiences that you have, and we receive them via emails, the more of a case we can build to push the administration to say what's happening with this. So by all means, please provide that feedback if you encounter things like this. Please let us know so that we can talk to our chief, we can talk to the detectives that have, that are in charge of certain areas and ask for solutions and ask for, answers. I mean, is this true? Like, what's the process? How are police officers being deployed and, when they see something like that? So.
When you have things like that, if you can, it's really hard for us to talk, to answer after the fact about situations that we weren't there for and that we didn't see. But if things like that happen to you and you can get either a badge number or a name of an officer, that we can follow up with that and is our role in oversight and ensure that things like that aren't happening. But a lot of times too, when a police officer arrives on scene, it's not immediately clear who is the person that's perpetrating, and a lot of times the person that's saying, go and get that guy, sometimes that guy might be part of the problem.
Fair enough. I was so upset and irritated that I didn't get the officer's badge number.
Yeah,
should have.
I understand that.
But the solution we're saying is, see something, say something.
Yeah.
I'm doing that.
Yeah, thank you,
We need it to have results.
thank you.
Not just go to some officer that wants my information.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that happened. But when things like that happen, I know it's hard to remember to get a badge number too, but even if you can talk about where it happened and the time of day, sometimes we can find out which officer was in the area and we can follow up. Thank you.
Well, I think we are going to conclude. We appreciate you guys coming. Thank you. Please continue the feedback. We're hoping to do some more of these, perhaps for budget season next year. But we are committed. We want you guys to know that. And we're gonna work on all and every solution that we can think of. If you have other solutions, please, for sure let us know. So thank you. Have a good night.